Welcome to Silver Vixen ASMR. Welcome to a Whisper Ramble about my books that I have hauled for 2022. Now I put hauled in quotes because the definition of hauled is usually somewhere in the realm of new purchases, and my books that I will be showing you tonight are not new in two senses. Firstly, I'm very much a second-hand book kind of girl. My dad has been a purveyor, a buyer and seller of second-hand books for some time now, and so everything that you see in this video is a second-hand book. So physically not new, and not new in the second way, in the sense that at least some of these books, I'm looking at them, they're around me here, they are not new to me in the sense that I've actually had these books that I've hauled for about 10 years. They've been at my parents' house, my dad's office, for quite some time, as I've been living overseas, moving, and so they're not really new in a lot of ways. But the more I look at the books that I picked out, the more I see that a lot of these have actually been gifted to me recently by my dad. So in that sense they're new, but I'm only showing a very small percentage of my hauled books. I actually counted earlier, and I have over 150 books that I have now brought from my parents to my home. So let me know if you do enjoy this video. Give me a comment, thumbs up, and perhaps I can do a video of the books that are very much have been mine, not recently gifted, but have been mine for these 10 years that I haven't seen. Some I've completely forgotten I ever owned. So let me know, and we can do this again. So the first book that I have here is a collection of Sappho's poetry, and if you're not sure who Sappho is, she was a Greek poet in ancient Greece, and she's super famous in classics corners. I must say, I am very sad that this book has been out of my physical possession for such a long time, because I love poetry and I always enjoy reading works or reading about works by women, especially from such ancient times. I think growing up, the exploits and adventures and achievements of many very successful women were not really brought to the forefront, were not often taught to us in school, or just talked about, in general. And so when I first heard about Sappho, I was really fascinated to learn about this figure who, from so far back in our history as the human species, was doing what she wanted to do and engaging in literature. So I'm very excited to dip into this, dip in and dip out. That's what's great about poetry. You don't have to sit down for 2-3 hours and hash it out. So this is definitely a lovely little bedside book, and I'm very, very glad to have rediscovered it in my own collection. This one is one that has been mine for many years. And then we'll just launch straight into this beautiful old, most of these books are quite old, copy of, and I'm not sure if you'll be able to see, It's Good Wives by Louisa May Alcott. I'm a huge fan of Louisa May Alcott's Little Women, and I believe she wrote Good Wives as the sequel, and I think Little Men as a third installment. I've only read Little Women up to this point, but I'm very excited. It's a lovely smelling old book, lovely typeface, very much old school, and this is just a gorgeous little compact. It's so nice. You have even a handbag that is a pretty regular size. You could fit this in there and take this with you. So, as I said, massive fan of Little Women, so this is a welcome addition. Alright, so Doris Lessing's The Grass is Singing is a very famous book in my part of the world. It's considered a classic novel in Southern Africa, and it's very much a sensitive topic kind of novel, very serious. There are race relations, there is violence, so it's one of those books that I know I need to be in the right time, in the right space to read it, because these things can be very upsetting, and they're meant to, that's the intention. And I do think that it's important to look at, to face, to recognize the very painful experiences of life, and educate yourself. It's always a great opportunity if you personally have not been affected by a particular topic that you're reading about, to open your mind and look into what that experience might be like, look into how it can affect a victim or a survivor, their psychology moving forward. Again, I think I'll have to really be in a good place to tackle this one. Same with Andre Brink, A Dry White Season. So this has been highly recommended to me. I've been an English teacher in the past, and I was recommended this book by a fellow English teacher, and it's almost embarrassing to admit that I haven't read it yet, but this too is a very, very sensitive subject book, set during apartheid, so really very forefront of discussions of race, and the difficulties and violence that has come forth throughout history, but certainly in the history of South Africa. So it's really not too long a novel. It's not going to take a massive amount of time to physically read it, but I think this is also the type of book that you kind of need to put it down for like a day or two after maybe a particularly tough scene. I am looking forward to reading it though. And then in sort of moving into a new category but somewhat related to the two books before, I have two history books. Here's one, and here's the other. Now this one this is one of the ones that it's been mine for a long time, and I remember reading this. I can't see if you can see. It's called Revolutions and Revolutionaries, and I studied history at school, and having studied English literature, there's a lot of history that you need to be aware of. Any novel you read that has, well, basically any novel that has a setting is going to have some important historical context. So I've never really stopped studying history. I forgot to mention this is by A.J.P. Taylor. And so I have read a bit of this before, and I'm going to actually read a little bit on the back. Violent political upheavals have occurred as long as there have been political communities. But in Europe, only since the French Revolution have they sought not merely to change the rulers, but to transform the entire social and political system. Alright, then it goes on. In his lively and combative style, the author traces the line of development of the revolutionary tradition from 1789 through Chartism, the social and national upheavals of 1848, the revolutionaries without a revolution of the following 60 years, Marx, Engels, Bakunin, and others, to the Bolshevik seizure of power in 1917. So it's good to know the time frames there, and I'm looking forward to probably looking at it chapter by chapter, not all in one sitting, but also almost as a refresher course to some world history. And then, as I said, I have The Archduke and the Assassin by Lavender Castles. This is a lovely book, lovely, nice cover, then we've got a map, and that is of the Habsburg monarchy in 1914. So we've got boundaries that existed more than a century ago. So anyone who knows even a little bit about world history would know that this Archduke and this assassin is in reference to Franz Ferdinand and Princip. It doesn't say a first name, or maybe that is his first name, so it doesn't say a surname, but this is in reference to the assassination of Franz Ferdinand by Princip that sparked a chain of events that basically led to World War I breaking out. Basically, there were many tensions between many different nations, and this was just the sort of tipping point for a few to get it going. And I'm speaking quite vaguely because the last time I really properly studied this was in high school, but that's why I have the book, and that's why I will read it. I also have a lovely stack of South African literature, beautiful hardcover copies, very fortunate to be the recipient of these books. These were a gift from my dad, and I'm quite excited to delve into them. I have a few more Christopher Hope books, but they are soft covers, so I haven't shown them just yet. But it's quite a bit to get through in terms of reading, so that might be nice to have a little challenge that I set myself, a Christopher Hope challenge, because I do like, while reading, to mix it up. I don't like to read the same author, novel after novel after novel, unless it's something like Harry Potter or obviously any type of series. I've also been gifted some beautiful picture books, and as you can see, the topic here is fairies. I have two others beside me that I will show in a moment. Lovely artwork, beautiful drawing, sketching, colouring. It's really quite a pleasure. It's almost best to have as a coffee table book. I also have this Good Fairies, absolutely gorgeous. This particular copy can be read from the front and from the back. Very interesting. I'm not entirely sure the logic behind the design. It might have something to do with fairy lore, so I'd be quite keen to find that out as I peruse this particular book. My usual fodder when it comes to reading, as you've seen, it's mostly novels. I basically only read novels. My passion for reading is visualized in this little representative stack. We have, and there's a little sticker here from previous owner, but Michael Ondaatje. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's very, very difficult to always know. Maybe in your own accent it makes sense with the spelling. He is, I believe, Sri Lankan and Dutch. Sri Lankan and Canadian. Michael Ondaatje was born in Sri Lanka and moved to Canada in 1962. Alright. Michael Ondaatje is famous for The English Patient, and I love that book so much. That's one of the ones that I picked up that has been mine for a long time. And this was in my dad's collection, and so because on the strength of The English Patient I grabbed A Nil's Ghost, and I'll just read a tiny bit of the synopsis to show you why I was interested in it. A Nil's Ghost transports us to Sri Lanka, a country steeped in centuries of tradition, now forced into the late 20th century by the ravages of the Civil War. Into this maelstrom steps Anil Tisera, a young woman born in Sri Lanka, educated in England and America, who returns to Sri Lanka as a forensic anthropologist sent by an international human rights group to investigate the organized murder campaigns engulfing the island. What follows is a story about love, about family, about identity, about the unknown enemy, about the quest to unlock the hidden past, a story propelled by a riveting mystery. So I'm absolutely super keen to dive into that one. The other three books that I have here, The Good Doctor by Damon Galgut. It was actually shortlisted for the Man Booker Prize, so very well received novel. The synopsis reads thusly. When Lawrence Waters arrives at his rural hospital posting, Frank is instantly suspicious. Lawrence is everything Frank is not. Young, optimistic, and full of new schemes. The two become uneasy friends, while the rest of the staff in the dilapidated hospital view Lawrence with a mixture of awe and distrust. The town beyond the hospital is also coping with new arrivals and the return of older faces. The Brigadier, a self-styled dictator from apartheid days, is rumoured still to be alive. And down at Mama's place, a group of soldiers have moved in with their malign commander, a man Frank has met before and is keen to avoid. Lawrence wants to help, but in a world where the past is demanding restitution from the present, his ill-starred idealism cannot last. Richard Yates's Revolutionary Road was adapted into a film some years ago, and it was quite a really. I would love to read the synopsis for this novel as well. Hailed as a masterpiece from its first publication, Revolutionary Road is the story of Frank and April Wheeler, a bright young couple who are bored by the banalities of suburban life and long to be extraordinary. With heartbreaking compassion and clarity, Richard Yates shows how Frank and April's decision to change their lives for the better leads to betrayal and tragedy. Our very last that I will be showing to you is a Louis de Bernier, Birds Without Wings. And this is a lovely edition, lovely and weighty, and it's just such a gorgeous copy, and it's definitely the kind of book you need to read in bed. This of course is a novel, but the setting is quite historical. I'll just read a little bit from the inner flap. Set against the background of the collapsing Ottoman Empire, the Gallipoli campaign, and the subsequent bitter struggle between Greeks and Turks, Birds Without Wings traces the fortunes of one small community in southwest Anatolia, a community in which Christian and Muslim lives and traditions have coexisted peacefully over the centuries. So, thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with me, having a nice visit and talking about books. If you enjoyed spending this time thinking about books, listening to me and my ideas about literature, please do consider subscribing. I will be posting videos at the start of each month where I look back on the books that I read in the month previously, and I will be starting that very soon in February. And further than that, I will also post a little less frequently book Babbles throughout the year, where I focus on just one book, going in depth and really expressing a lot of love. Usually I focus on characters, character development, character relationships. So if that's the kind of bookish content that you enjoy, please do subscribe and come visit with me again and again. Otherwise, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. If you've made it this far, it means a lot to me to have your support